Every time I get back from a trip, no matter how short, it's always nice to get the horses out and back into their regular routine. Ziggy was particularly excited to get turned out on his tiny little pasture. Thankfully, while I was away, he didn't have any more trouble with his eye. I think he maybe got some of the new bedding dust in it. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely going to take that into consideration before I completely switch them over. Somebody made a comment in the last video about his super long little eyeball hairs, and horses actually do need those. It helps them from bumping their eyes into things like walls or trees or other horses, so those are something that I will never cut off my horses. Ziggy has definitely been enjoying his time in his own personal stall, and I've noticed that he's been recently gaining a lot of muscle, especially in his shoulders, which has been really hard to build up the last couple of months. Prim has been trying her very hardest to become friends with him, and he is slowly warming up to the idea. It seems like Ziggy is the kind of horse that really likes to have his own personal space, but he needs to be able to see and interact with other horses. I'm gonna go ahead and feed all the horses their dinner, and I'll probably have to catch up on all of the chores tomorrow. Ziggy! I have had Ziggy for quite a few months now, but I feel like he is finally just starting to come out of his shell.
Hey, little buddy. Tiny. Tiny. Where are ya? Hey, girl. Hi, Tiny. Oh. You okay? Okay. Good night. Zig! Hey, buddy! Hey, Zig! Hey, bud.
It always takes me a few days to get back on
Ziggy?
schedule when I leave town.
Really?
Hopefully it'll only take me a day or two to get caught back up. It looks like Ziggy's back is doing so much better than it was last week. Huckleberry gets right to business checking on the feed room to make sure there's no gophers hiding out underneath all of the feed bins.
Leave him, boy.
Since Ziggy's been moved inside, I have been giving him some compressed alfalfa hay. This stuff is really expensive. I bought it for Frisco, but he doesn't really like to eat it, so Ziggy is going to finish up these last couple of bales. While I was out of town, I did set up little buckets of mash for Nigel and Frisco every day, and I think I might continue to do it. Sometimes I do forget to soak these overnight, and it's important I have some ready to go so I can feed Nigel in the morning.
Hey, Nigel! I'm coming.
This is the last day Nigel is getting the compounded medication. I am switching him over to the stuff that most people use. My vet thinks it might be a little bit more effective, so we're going to give it a try.
Hey, old boy.
The pelleted bedding has been working really well for Frisco. His stall tends to stay pretty wet. The pellets keep it so much drier, and I have noticed a big difference in his feet lately. It looks like with all of his mash, he has been using his legs as a little bit of a napkin. I've tried a few different things to feed Nigel and Frisco this summer, but it seems like the best mash is always just a mixture of alfalfa pellets and beet pulp.
Mayor.
Prim did not get turned out the few days I was gone, so she is super fresh today.
Come on, girl.
I always get a few comments when I call any of the horses fresh, and it just means that they have a lot of extra energy. Typically, Prim gets turned out in the small arena every morning while I do chores, and today I bet she is going to have a ton of extra steam to let off. Surprisingly, she was able to contain her excitement long enough to go around and sniff all the poop piles, and then it was off to the races.
Hey, buddy.
Prim is usually a really chill mare, but it looks like she did have a little bit of extra energy to get rid of this morning.
Hey, girl. Oh, girl.
I'm gonna go ahead and give Prim a little bit of her breakfast out here this morning so she can snack on it and run around and get all of her extra energy out. I do have a lot more chores to get done this morning. I've got to clean all of the stalls in the barn again. I've got to clean out the runs.
Whoa, girl.
Hopefully when I'm done in a few hours, Prim will be ready to go back in her stall. There is a pretty big fire burning down in Wyoming, and we are getting a ton of smoke up here from that.
Nigel? Eat your pill? Boy?
After I see that Nigel has indeed decided to eat his pill, he gets the rest of his mash for the morning. Hopefully, since Nigel has been getting a very small amount of the compounded medication, once I switch him over to the typical medication, he won't have nearly the amount of side effects that some other horses experience. Another thing I prepped for the horse sitter was a bunch of hay bags, and it is super handy to have these ready. Prim is going to get one out here in the little arena. I'm going to put one in her stall as well. Now that she has some more hay in here, I bet she's going to calm down pretty quickly. A few of you guys have asked me why it is I don't turn Prim and Scarlet out together. I don't know if you can tell from the video, but Scarlet is actually taller than Prim right now. She's not nearly as wide yet. She's definitely still growing. Prim and Scarlet are very different horses.
Hey. Hey.
Good boy.
Scarlet is a lot more outgoing than she was, but she is kind of a little bit aggressive around the other horses, and I think Prim just can't handle her. Frisco Bill was really good at disciplining Scarlet when she was a baby, and so was Stewie, but both of those horses are now smaller than Scarlet, if you can believe it or not. While I was away, it looks like Scarlet did some modifications to her sunshade that I'm going to have to fix. The weather here has been unseasonably warm. I just looked at my phone and we did have our first snow already by this time last year. It is supposed to be staying around 80 degrees for the next week or so during the day, and then during the evening it's not even going to get below freezing.
Pete. That's a good boy, Pete. There you go, Peto.
It seems like Pete maybe missed me while I was away. I have been trying to give him extra scratches every time I feed, which I think he maybe is enjoying. Stewie and little Gus get a little bit annoyed when I go away. I think they just like hanging out with me all the time, so when I'm not here, they get a little bit upset about it. Hopefully over the next week or two, I will be able to take advantage of this really nice weather. As you can see, the mountains are barely visible through all of the wildfire smoke that we have blown in right now. I am going to drag this dry lot and then probably put out a new round bale for these boys. These 3 boys have been going through a round bale about every 10 days, which is not really that long.
Gussie. Hey, boys.
I fixed all of the holes in this net before I left, and it looks like somebody chewed another small one in so they could get to the hay faster. I do have 2 different styles of these nets. This one over here is a heavy duty style with smaller holes. And it does look like the birds have been enjoying the corn that's in the neighboring field. To give you guys an idea of how small these holes are, here it is against my hand. It looks like Tiny has finally gotten up from her special hay stall. This bale over here that's a little bit deflated, I did put out 2 days after that other bale, but as you can see, the hay net is a little bit more thin and the holes are a little bit bigger, which just allows the horses to eat it faster.
Tiny. Come on.
Tiny doesn't seem too upset that I was away.
Okay,
it was
Gus?
really not that long. Gus, however, is
okay?
still a little bit annoyed with me.
You alright?
Little Gus is one of the horses that does have a lot of stress and anxiety just normally,
good
so
boy.
when I go away, I think it maybe bothers him a little bit more than the other horses. One thing that I do with little Gus all the time while I'm home is he does get his pole adjusted quite often. I'm not sure if it's because little Gus pulled back at some points during his life or if he had a really ill-fitting bridle at one time, but he does store a lot of tension in his pole, and if it's not released regularly, he gets extra cranky. We really haven't been able to find anything physically wrong with him, but I think there's just a lot of tension that stores up in there, and you can definitely see it when he doesn't get adjusted after a couple of days. I'm really glad I got to get out of town for a few days. I've been a little bit extra stressed just with everything going on with the horses, and it's nice to come home and get back into the swing of things.
Come on.
Huckleberry is happy to be back home as well. He does love dog daycare, but I think he likes his chores around the barn maybe a little bit more.
Come on. Get your bow.
It looks like Prim has finally run down all of her extra energy and is happily munching on her hay. I think maybe for the rest of the afternoon I will let her outside. It isn't too hot out, so she should be fine here in the small arena, even though she doesn't have a lot of shade. It always takes me a few days to get my bearings when I get back home, and I completely forgot that I was going to drag this dry lot. Thankfully, I noticed while I was heading down the driveway, so I came back and closed it and opened up the other gate so the boys would have water for the day. While I was out of town, I actually broke my phone completely. It just stopped working one day, so I do have a new phone that might take me a little bit to get used to as well. My other phone was a bit of a fossil, so hopefully you guys will be able to notice a difference in the picture quality, and I might be able to figure out some of the fancy new features that it has. Even though my trip was only a few days, it did allow me to mentally prepare for winter a little bit more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.